So a lot of times when you're repairing a guitar, you've got these little chip outs that I've got here with this Paul Reed Smith. I bought this a couple of years ago and I don't like the feel of the chip outs on the neck. GluBoost has a great product called MasterTint. They have different color options such as vintage colors or modern colors. If you look at the different kits, you can see the colors that you need. I'm going to go ahead and repair some of these here today. When you buy the kits, you get a non-stick mixing palette and a couple nice little shovels here. I'm going to be using the fill and finish product. And I had used that earlier in the day, and I wanted to come back and fill these additional cracks. So what you do is you get just a little bit of the tint. A little bit goes a long way. And this needs just a little bit of red. You can play around with the colors to get the right match. Just a little bit. They have yellows, blues, whites, blacks, but I've got a brown and a little bit of red. I'm going to use the blue, thicker fill and finish formula. And we're going to go ahead and mix this up. Now the more glue you add, the more transparent the color is. And one of the keys is not to add too much color. So that seems just a bit dark. Like I said, this stuff goes a long way. Add a little bit more glue. I've done a couple of repairs already with this. Works pretty well. Make sure this stuff is mixed up. We're going to tape off where I want to glue so I don't make a huge mess. Even when you're attempting to not make a huge mess, sometimes you get little runoff. And I'll build up a little dam here. This can be done on a bunch of different finish types. So Paul Reed Smith uses a heavy duty poly. You can use it in lacquer. And if you just use the straight glue, you can use it in clear. And I've got another repair, I'll show you that after this. So we mix this up, we let it sit for a little bit. You gotta play with the colors a little bit to get the right match. And I knew through some of the work I've done previously, it needed a little bit of red and it needed just a little bit of brown. Still think that's a little bit too dark. Only needed a little tint to get this to work right. See, as this spreads out, still too thick. That should be the ticket. Mix this in, you got this nice shovel. Layer just a little bit. A little bit too much here. I'm going to rub it in a little bit just to make sure I get no bubbles. It's probably a tad too thick, so we're going to sponge some of that out. You can see that's looking pretty decent. You can move this stuff to the side. Come back with the accelerator. It solidifies. Come back with that same material again and apply one more. So for this crack, it's probably the biggest gouge. I'll have to turn the body to the side and clamp it. These I can fix all at the same time. Probably what I'll end up doing with this PRS is refretting it and then relisting it, clean up the fretboard and get it out. Way too many projects going on here. And I've got a whole bunch of Jack Daniels guitars I gotta get done. Alright, so that's clean. We can go ahead and spray it again one more time with the accelerator. We're going to let this sit. And then we'll come back in a couple hours and see what it looks like. And we can take a little bit of sandpaper, sand out the lump, and we should be good to go to just take it to the buffer. Real quick process. Really happy with these tints. Makes repairs pretty quick. So we'll let this dry. Come back in a little bit. Alright, so it's been a couple hours. We're going to come back and sand this. And essentially what's happening is I've got the guitar, I had the chip, and then I've layered some super glue over that. And what you don't want to do is get some sandpaper and stick it on your finger and rub on it, because what's going to happen is you're going to do something like that when you're rubbing it, and you're going to get the sides sanded here. What you want to do is get a hard edge, like a piece of wood, something like this, where I can sand down on the bubble and not hit this. So if you use your finger, you'll end up rubbing over the top and get these sort of gouges. I've got a hard piece of wood. I'll just rub across and get it level. We'll start with like 180 to 220 to 320 to 600. Once we get down low enough, we can go ahead and use this, and then I can sort of sand the whole surface before I buff it. So we'll take the tape off. We're going to put new tape on, get the bump off. So I've got some 320. We'll just sand this down. You can see I'm just taking that top part off. So I nicked the side here. So we'll get some scratches here and there, even though I'm avoiding it. Come up with a little bit of higher grit. So we're getting pretty close there. So now that I want to scratch this whole surface, I can conform this to my finger. That was 320. This is 600. This is now 800. Coming back with 1500 now. So that's looking pretty good. It's nice and flat. There's a little bit of under peel. So what happens is there's a chip and that chip goes back underneath. Probably could have knocked it out and then refilled it, but the super glue got underneath it. I'm okay with that now. I can't feel any of the hole. It's matched pretty good. We'll take this over to the buffer, buff it out. I'm not going to film that. I'll bring it back and show you what it looks like. So I just got this off the buffer, and you can see if I didn't have those bubbles underneath, this probably would look fine. It's a tad dark for this, so that means I'd have to thin it a little bit more before I apply it. So in these spots up here, it'd probably be a tad dark. It obviously looks better than the bare wood. If this was my personal guitar, I may go back in, chip these out, and then reapply. But, you know, it is pretty beat up, and that is much better than having the spot as you're playing to feel that. So we did this in a couple different spots. We'll go ahead and post some pictures of this when it looks all done. One of the lessons learned here was that the smaller chip out, I could have a little bit darker material. It's not as noticeable. But in the bigger chip out, you definitely want to use less tint. I think doing this again, I would put the glue down first and then add just a little bit of tint and mix it in that way. But that is GluBoost MasterTints. Really easy way to patch up some holes in your guitar, in your finish. If you dent or chip it, this works in lacquer. This is a poly. Pretty neat product. Really happy with the way that turned out. Thanks for watching, guys. We will see you in the next video.